Hello, my name is Rick Pfenninger, and today I want to talk about synthesizers in this lovely, lovely, lovely world that we now have, where AI is creating music for us. Could it get any weirder? You really, as a composer, need to be working on developing your own sounds. AI is only as good as whatever's out on the web, so you can create sounds, and then AI can steal it and hopefully not copyright it. That is yet to be determined. But anyway, I own a ton of synths, both virtual and real. And probably if there's a synth out there, I own it. And I found, for me, Serum makes the most sense. So I'm going to spend the next 4 or 5 videos, maybe more, depending on how it goes, teaching you how to learn Serum. I think it's the most intuitive and easy to learn and easy to get up and running. So hopefully you enjoy this. Let me know if you want more videos like this, and I'm happy to do it. Okay, as I've already stated, I own a lot of synths, both virtual and in the real world. I like Serum because I find it the most intuitive of all the synths that I've messed around with and worked with. I will put a link down below. I don't know what the price is. It's pretty reasonable compared to everything else. But I really feel like you should start with something that makes sense. To me, this makes sense. You may disagree. Anyway, we're going to start with the init. And we're going to develop short sounds first because those are the easiest sounds to design and work with. So we're going to start here with the init. And if you're not seeing init, if you click on whatever's up here, there's a down arrow, and go to S1 presets, and then go down to init, and it will always load the init. In fact, I recommend going back to the initialization. It's easier to say init. Every time to learn the basic controls. And if you get so deep into what you're doing and you're messed up, just go back to the init and start over again. Very, very simple. The other thing I like about this, if you hover over your mouse over a control, not all controls, but most of them, they will give you a brief definition of what you're looking at. So like here's for semitone, etc., etc. The other thing too, if you want to work with a larger space, if you go up to the Serum 2 up here on the left hand side, click on it, and you'll get a percentage. I have set my default to 150. I'm older. I like things bigger, so that will give you an idea about that. So I'm going to talk about the basic controls, and the first thing I want to talk about are oscillators. And oscillators are sound sources. So if you'll notice up here, we have oscillator A, oscillator B, and oscillator C. So there's 3 oscillators. We're going to just start with one. And the init has a sound. So if you hit your keyboard and play it. And you can see down here we have a virtual keyboard, and you can see what I'm playing on here. So those are your basic sound sources, and you can change these if you go up here by the wavetable, and you can also I'm going to talk about all of these later. So if you go to the basic sounds right here, you're going to see that there are a ton. You can go to digital, S2 tables, analog. Oh my gosh, there's more sounds than you will ever get through. And I'll talk about how to save your sounds as we progress. But I recommend going through and taking notes and finding what sounds that you like. And then you can manipulate those sounds. So it just goes on and on and on and on. And but this is a good way to start to familiarize yourself with what sounds are available. And you can always go back to the init. And for these lessons, I'm just going to start with the init and talk about some of the controls. So here's your oscillators, A, B, and C, 3 of them. And I'll talk about a lot of these controls right here. And if you're interested in what you do, if you just hover over it, it will tell you, for the most part, what they do. So next, I want to talk about, excuse me, envelopes. And basically envelopes are in the middle right here. We have 4 envelopes, envelope 1, 2, 3, 4. And what an envelope does is it controls how sound evolves over time. And there's a graph. And I'm going to start with the init and talk about this. And you know, probably you've heard attack, decay, sustain, release, ADSR. So here they are. I'll talk about hold as well later. So attack, obviously, when you push a key down, it's how long it takes the sound to get to the max volume. And if you look at the graph up here, the max volume is at the top. So the attack in this case is at 0. So it takes 0 milliseconds to get to the top. If you'll notice, you can't watch it going up this line to the top. It's instant. So if I make a longer attack, notice that the graph is now moving, and obviously we're going to see that it's going to take some time to get up to the max sound when I hit the key. That's with a longer attack sound. So experiment with the different attacks. So I'm going to slide this back so it's instantaneous. Next, I want to talk about sustain. I don't know if they give you, yeah, they do. Sustain level for selected envelope. Okay, it's not much of a definition there. But what sustain does, tells you what the volume will be as soon as you hold the key down. So you can see it's almost, well, it isn't, it's the volume. So if I turn the sustain down, notice that my volume level, so it's reached the max level here. And look what happens to the sustain when I do that. So this is now, you can think of this as a volume, you know, once you put the key down. And if I make my attack, and again, this is max volume that you're setting with the sustain. So if you just almost think of this as a volume indication, you know, what the volume will be as you hold the key down. Not initially, but as you hold the key down. There's my volume that it ends up being at. And that is through the sustain. Okay? So the next one is decay. And that's the amount of time it takes for the sound to reach the volume we set in the sustain. So if I set a sustain, let's move this down a little bit, softer sound. And then if I increase the decay, it's going to take longer to get to that. Let me do a lower. And if I have a quick decay, gets right to that sound, that volume. And if I have a longer decay, it takes longer to get at the volume that we set with the sustain. So experiment with those. And just remember that an attack is how long it takes for sound to reach the max volume. And then sustain is what the volume will be as you hold the key down. And decay is the amount of time it takes for our sound to reach the volume that we set in the sustain. So write those down. It'll take a little bit of time to wrap your head around it, and experiment with just those 3 with the init and with different sound, you know, oscillator sounds. So the last one I want to talk about today is release. And that's how the sound will fade out when we let go of the key. So if you'll notice now, let's put this all the way up. The minute I let go of the key, it's shutting off. So if I set a longer release, hear how that takes a while? And I almost think of a release like a sustain pedal on a piano. So if I were to play multiple keys quickly, it's almost like I'm holding down the sustain pedal on a piano. So what I'd like you to do for this video is just experiment right now with, you know, getting back to the init and attack sustain, decay, and release. Experiment with those, and then experiment with different sounds using those three, using one envelope and attack, decay, sustain, and release. And then I will move forward, adding. We're just going to add. This is going to be like music, learning a musical instrument, right? First, you got to learn how to. I started out as a clarinet player, had to learn how to make the embouchure, hold the clarinet, and just get a basic sound. That's what we're doing now. And then when I moved to saxophone and flute, I didn't have to go back necessarily to learning how to read music, etc., etc. Same thing. You're going to find a lot of these controls are on every synth. Be it a virtual instrument or a actual synth that you own. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Hopefully I can help. I am by no means an expert on this, but I feel like as a composer, you really need to be learning how to, especially in this day and age with AI, developing your own unique sounds that are unique to what you do as a composer.